Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we are playing as Kane. If I sound a bit different, that's just because I have a bit of a cold, but regardless, the show must go on. So the first item I get in my first item room is called the Lost Protector or the Swarm Protector, I'm not really sure. But I thought it was the item, the Lost Fly I think, which flies around the room and damages enemies near the corners or like near the borders of the room. But in fact, it's an item that doesn't activate until you get hit, and when you activate it, you get an attack fly-esque effect. The only difference is it has a bit higher range, which is nice because you can actually hit enemies with it that are kind of further away, but it deals less damage because it moves faster as well. So if I knew that this was this item, I wouldn't pick it up. The other item that I thought this was, the Lost Fly, is actually, in my opinion, very useful against most enemies, or against a lot of enemies. Some annoying enemies that you can deal with. That fly really does take good care of them, and it's very useful also against certain bosses like the Haunt early on. Well, this item is just not very useful because you have to get hit first, and because we are playing a daily, we're not really intending on getting hit at all, and even when we get hit, that fly is just not gonna be a good benefit to us, so there's no reason really why we should be happy to get that item. It's just not a good item at all. So our first item here is Little Loki. Not item, but our first boss here is Little Loki, and I'm always happy when I see Little Loki. I think he's a very designed boss. What I really like about him is that sometimes he just ends up killing himself with his bombs and just maybe walks into fire sometimes. By far the most annoying attack he has is the Black Ball, which chases you down just because it can bounce in different directions and it's hard to deal with. But thankfully there are a lot of components, I think, to Little Loki that kind of make him an interesting boss fight. So obviously dodging the holes so you don't fall into them, and sometimes even bouncing the troll bombs into Little Loki yourself is I think a mechanic that's very rewarding for fighting him. What I wish didn't happen though is that he would spawn a bomb and then teleport right next to it, so then he kind of explodes himself. I think it's much more rewarding if you're the one who causes the bomb to go into his direction, so then he explodes. But you know, I think it's okay as it is. I think he's a very fair boss, at least for the first floor. He's not too strong, he's not too weak, and I think he's just in the right category. He kind of fits with all that theme of monster bosses and maybe pin bosses. He's somewhere in between. I'll say it like this: he's balance, because he's a bit on the easier side. He's a balance between easy bosses and the Ragman, which also good at it. And obviously we all know that Ragman is one of the most annoying bosses you can face on the first floor. With that said, this run actually led into a few different directions. So we got the Friendly Ball here, which is obviously a Pokeball, which for monsters in Isaac. So what you do is you throw it, so that's the first charge, and the next time you use it, you actually release the Pokemon, well, not the Pokemon, the monster you caught, and that monster actually fights for you. And some enemies work well with this. Like I would say any enemies that deal contact damage is just not a good item with this. Are not a good catch with this item, because they need to get into contact with enemies and they have low HP and usually they end up dying. So your best bet is to take something that has a ranged attack, preferably something that has a Brimstone range attack, because those Brimstone attacks really do help. So what you maybe want to do is get a few wall huggers, so the ones that have a Brimstone laser, or maybe even the ones that walk around and like spread their chest and then shoot the Brimstone out. So those are usually the best items, or maybe even the monsters who spawn flies or something like that, because this spawned flies will also be friendly, and you know they can generate a lot of them. So the best plan is just to catch a lot of enemies and just have a big army when you enter a room. But I failed to use it in a somewhat good way. I felt like whenever I used it, when I felt like it was good enough, the next room had better monsters in it. Or sometimes you want to catch a monster, or I catch a monster, I guess that's okay. You want to catch a monster, and the problem is that you're right on the charge that actually releases the monster you've caught before. So it actually takes like 6 charges to just go back to catching a monster again, which I feel is a bit too long. I feel like this item is underwhelming enough that it could easily be a 2-charge item, just because you actually need 4 rooms to get any use out of it, because first you have to catch a monster, then you have to release it. And I think 4 rooms is a fair charge, just by the fact that so many monsters are useless. Of course, it does have the chance to be really strong when you just catch like a lot of Brimstone monsters. But I think that's the charm of this item, of any item in general, that they have opportunity to be really strong, but in an average case they're just gonna be okay, or maybe not even okay. Like Friendly Ball is actually very underwhelming in the average case, and I think this run is a testament to that. Like I really stuck with this item through the whole game, even though I had a lot of better opportunities. I could have picked up a Book of Revelations before, which is obviously a superior item, which gives you a Spirit Heart every 6 rooms. And because this run is very super weak, that would have been probably a good idea. And later on I have some choices to get Shoop the Whoop and some other, I think even Krampus's Head. All of those are better items than Friendly Ball, but I just stuck with it, just for the hell of it, I guess. Just to kind of experiment a bit. I didn't expect this run to go super well because, like I said, I'm a bit sick. So when I was playing it, my concentration was kind of waning already. So I wasn't expecting such a slog of a run because we have no damage ups, no tears up. I think no tears ups is even worse than no damage ups. When I say no damage ups, of course, I mean we only have a few damage ups. So like Stigmata and Magic Mush so far, I think, are the only damage ups. And thankfully we even got a Lump of Coal. Which kind of makes it a bit easier to deal with enemies, but at the same time, you know, like when you're somewhat strong, so you know we're dealing some damage, we're killing enemies in 2 or 3 hits. It's taking obviously a lot of time just because our tear speed is not high, but also when you get those curses, the annoying curses, then things just end up kind of taking too long, and you know you start losing the ability to dodge properly after a certain amount of time, especially if maybe you're sleepy or whatever. So here again I had a chance to take Tammy's Head, which is an obviously better spacebar item than Friendly Ball, but I just decided, you know what, I'll just stick with Friendly Ball, maybe try to get a use out of it. So I tried using it in a lot of different directions or ways that I normally wouldn't. I would usually do this like on regular runs, but since I don't really do regular runs anymore after I got all the achievements, I'm just kind of taking my time and experimenting on dailies that I think I won't perform as well. Because in my opinion, it doesn't really matter if I rank well, unless I'm like really trying. And if I see a daily is going badly, then I might as well have some fun, right? But yeah, like from my experience, this item just wasn't very well good first, but also useful. It just really felt like a lot of times there was nothing to do. And there were a lot of rooms where you just can't catch enemies because they're mini bosses or bosses, or even sometimes enemies that you might think you can catch them, but you actually can't. Like I'm not really sure. I would expect that I would be able to catch like a fistula part when it splits, but you actually can't do that, which is a bit odd. So it's not even really correlated to size. It's just about correlated to which enemies you can and can't catch. And what's even weirder, some enemies you can catch, like the Gurglings, which are obviously the boss of the first floor, but you can catch them later on. But some other bosses, which are also part of the bosses of the previous floors, but then become regular enemies, you can't catch. So I was kind of experimenting with that idea, trying to catch some mini bosses that I knew wouldn't work, but I still, like I said, maybe gave it a shot, just to see if Friendly Ball has any secret uses that I might not be aware of. So here I take the eye turrets for my friends, and they actually turned out pretty fine, and I had 2 of them at some point, but of course as soon as you get a room that has a lot of enemies in it, they're gonna run in that eye, and because it doesn't have a lot of HP, it's just gonna die. But yeah, they did turn out pretty well, but by far the most useful character or monster I had in this run in total was definitely the guy which shoots a brimstone attack, because that really does help with crowd control. So somehow, even though this run was super bad, I was crazy enough to go for Hush. I feel pretty comfortable against Hush just in general. I don't think he's too difficult of a boss. I can usually do him without getting hit too much, so maybe not more than 3 times on average. Here I even got Explosivo, which is an item I usually wouldn't take on a low tier run, just because it effectively cuts your DPS against most enemies by like 30% or maybe less. But basically what happens, some of your tiers turn into explosive tiers which stick to enemies, and a lot of enemies just hide or maybe teleport, and they lose the explosive tiers on them that are stuck to them. Obviously it's helpful against Hush, because Hush is most often than not just stays up and you can damage it. The only problem is when he kind of spawns his little guys, then you can't really deal with them properly. But against almost any other enemy, or against any other boss which has a way to kind of dodge around and teleport and maybe go underground, Explosivo becomes a very detrimental item. It's still a fun item to use in my opinion, but it's so much better and nicer if you can actually use it with high tier speed, just because there's the more chance for the bomb to stick, and of course you also have just overall more damage because you're shooting more tiers that are not explosive shots. This room just caused me so many troubles, and this is exactly the room that you don't want to fight with explosive tiers, with the ghosts which teleport around, and the ghosts when they teleport of course lose their explosive charge, and because our DPS is just not very high, it takes us like 10 seconds to kill just one ghost, and there's like 8 of them, and you can't really dodge them because when they all shoot and spawn at the same time, there's just nowhere to go. And that's not, like I said, that's one of the not benefits, I guess, one of the detriments of having Explosivo. So here, Mega Satan, I mean just Satan, is I'm usually, like I said, pretty comfortable against most bosses. I did go in with 3 health, thinking it was enough, but my concentration was kind of waning at that point, and actually it went pretty well so far. I got hit once, but what happened is the fly spawned in a very unfortunate position. Like, as soon as I was going, it spawns right into my path, so that was a bit unfortunate. I was hoping that I would actually finish this run, but I ended up dying. But you can see, even though we missed boss rush and we died in this floor, I would just finish it after anyway, so we would get like maybe 3,000-4,000 more points. We actually didn't do too badly. Like, obviously rank 115 isn't super good, but it's not actually as bad as you would expect it on a run that is as weak as this. So this is really a testament just to us how weak this run was, and usually I wouldn't even edit it out. Whenever there's a run that isn't super fun, I'll just maybe leave everything sped up and I won't really talk over it. But I think this one was just fun enough with the friendly ball and all the things with it that it warranted the commentary. So with that said, guys, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.